All right, so we're back with This Podcast is Garbage. Nate with Trash Joe's is back. We're on episode 9, I believe.
Yeah.
We are here to discuss a increasingly more complicated topic of what are the conditions in which you would start a garbage company. Seems simple, but all of our preliminary discussion has wrapped my brain up, and I'm going to bow out after I pass it off to Nate. But we also have Mitchell here. Sorry I didn't introduce you.
No, you're all good.
But I think they know you by now.
They're getting an idea.
Yeah, this is my first week back from taking a week off, so I'm like still kind of like I'm here, but not really. But Nate, you're back. You made the drive into the Columbus. What is your outline or bullet points for starting a garbage company?
Oh, yeah. Mitchell and I were talking about different things we could discuss, and one of the things I thought would be a good conversation is, when would it be an ideal time to enter a market? Whether you're starting anew or if you're going to try to buy out maybe a smaller player, and what are some of those variables? Because I think people probably sit back and go, "Yeah, this is a great idea." They have that initial excitement, but unless you really have these 4 variables tied down, I don't think you can have I don't think you'll have a great understanding. But if you do have these tied down, you're going to know inside of your business model how you can be able to really get after it.
Well, I'd maybe add to that just a little bit. So within our own situation, just seeing, what it's like competing, understanding a market, understanding like what goes into like the operating cost of running a trash company and trying to get customers has like helped us understand, okay, if we were going to look at another market, like what are some of the bigger things we'd be looking at? Because there are definitely markets you would enter and there's markets you would not enter from our perspective.
Correct.
So how would you analyze that?
So, and like we discussed, there's basically 4 variables that we're going to discuss today. And number 1 would be what kind of service is going on in that marketplace. If we have good service or bad service, how does that impact it? Number 2 would be the price point for, and we'll use this all in the reference of residential trash.
Wouldn't it be a different model though for commercial? Commercial would be fairly similar, and then roll off, obviously.
I think commercial might be different simply because there's more contracts in that area. So that would play a different part in that conversation. But price definitely does. So if you have someone who's charging $35 and you're sitting at your business plan going, I was thinking at $26, everything flows. You've got a nice delta there. The third thing would be market share. How much market share? Are there 6 haulers there? You're going to be the 7th one, and so you're going to end up with what 14%. If it all gets divvied out, is that enough market share? Lastly would be the other type of haulers that are in the market.
Yep. And so starting with service, bad service. So let's walk through service a little bit. So I would say, yeah, there's good service, there's bad service, and then I'd say there's type of service.
Yeah. Well, let's go with service overall. And number 1 is just getting the trash picked up is a problem in many markets. Shortage of this, shortage of pay led to a shortage of drivers, it compounded and, or, a business is not doing well, it's poorly managed. But, they don't pick up trash, people start to get frustrated. And when you think about a $25 or $30 bill every month, it's if I said, oh, Mitchell, I can save you $2 a month on your trash service, you're like, yeah, whatever. It's really hard to get motivated to switch over a couple bucks a month. But if I've got, a whole bunch of flies in the middle of summer coming off my trash can and I'm having to stack it up because you don't show up, that is a motivating factor. People love the consistency, and if they don't show up, those are people. That's the number 1 reason people will switch.
Well, I always talk about Lincoln. So in Lincoln, they've got a lot of private haulers, and they've got some haulers that have been around for like 100 years. And it's like, the continuity of a company to be around for 100 years. But what's crazy about residential garbage in particular is as long as you pick it up punctually every week and send them a bill, you've got a very sticky customer base.
Very.
Why would those people switch? And especially when you start like adding, they've been with you for 5 years, 10 years, 15. I mean, price is not the main driving factor for somebody to switch. In my mind, the main reason they would, preemptively switch on their own is service. But that goes back to that's a blessing and a curse. If you have good service and you pick it up every week, those are sticky customers that are going to be very hard to lose. But that can go the other direction really fast. If your service is bad, those customers are gone.
And think about all the people that you see out on route that are excited to see that truck come between 10:14 and 10:39, whatever that window is. And being on the inside of the office and catching some of those calls of, it's 11:02 and the truck hasn't been by yet.
Yeah.
Okay, it's still Thursday,
Yeah.
but you didn't hit the window, and I don't think necessarily people realize how much of an impact it has, because it really does. You take what 40% of households are only one person in them. This is one of the the mailman and the trash truck are like, and maybe the lawn guy are the consistency that show up.
Yeah, just on an operational tangent, the downside of that for someone like myself doing operations, like this conversation is you guys kind of doing the business side of things, but operationally makes it really hard to route when you get those calls. Because like I'll be in an area at 10:30 every time or something like that, and it's like, well, I need to change this other neighborhood because of the school zones or something.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I generate phone calls just by tweaking a few stops.
But
on
don't
a
you
route.
feel like a little bit of wow, these people like pay that much attention to me.
Yeah,
They know if I'm here within 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah, I do, but the abrasive side of me is like, how about I just do my job the way I think it should be done?
yep, please just set it out in the morning, and if I'm not there by 5 o'clock,
and
go ahead and call in.
And I've learned to be like diplomatic. Like I understand, like people like that consistency. Going to the topic of service, they love that continuity, and that's why I don't change routes too drastically often, because I want to maintain that level of service, even if it's minorly inconvenience to me when I'm trying to run things a little bit more efficiently. It's a juice versus the squeeze type scenario.
Right, and and part of that too is it's also letting them know, right? And you've had the situation where you've had, we've sent out a message, here's a broadcast because, hey, we're running late. We had a truck breakdown.
Right.
Reaching out and having that communication, immediately diffuses that, because they're like, oh, I understand. It's not they're not looking at where that were. So
We got the deeper part of service too, I would say, is like what level of service are they currently being provided and what are their expectations? Because like to me, if I'm going to enter a market at this point, the best way to do it is like with an automatic side loader. You're tipping carts. Ideally, you don't have extras. If you do have extras, you're charging for them. So I mean, if you have a market where people kind of have like an unlimited service where you set out a cart, you can set out extras, and nobody gets charged for it, that's just going to kill your margins. So if customers expect that and they, expect for you to take everything they set out, that's a different type of customer than if they're in a market that's like pretty professional and it's like, yeah, we come, our driver shows up, we tip the can. If you have extras, we'll load it, we charge you. That's just their level of expectation.
Right.
So, I mean, there's just a little depth to service as well, as far as like what the customer expectation of you is.
So
And that kind of leads us into price.
well, and I got an interesting insight from a hauler I'm working with, and she said, if you call in and you want to make a payment over the phone, that's fine. It's an extra $2.
Yep.
And it was and I didn't know how to take that or not. But she's like, hey, if I have to answer the phone and we have to do this, she goes, it has pushed people to auto pay.
Yeah.
So I can't, I don't know if that's the right stick to get in that direction, you know.
But it's true, right? They understand their costs and they're like, we want to reduce our costs. So the best way for us to price our service properly is try to get our customers to all do what needs to be done to make this work the best.
Right.
And if every customer called in to make a payment, you would drastically increase the amount of office staff you need.
Yeah.
So to allow a few people to drive that cost while the majority of people are paying online, I don't think that's out of line.
Right, but you have to make sure that on the service side that you give them a myriad of tools to go ahead and
Right.
make that payment.
So what I've heard
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what I've heard is you call in to make a payment and they say, well, I can take this over the phone. It's going to be $5, or you can take your web ID number, go online, and pay it yourself.
I'll just go ahead and send you the message right now.
I'll send you the message right now.
And now go ahead and sign up for auto pay and email billing only,
Well,
please.
that's kind of the reciprocity or what's the word? Reciprocal relationship where you need continuity. They want continuity of service from the trash hauler, right? I expect you like I know it's supposed to be by the day, but maybe they expect you between 10:30 or 11. It's like, okay, I need continuity from the customer as well.
Exactly.
You know,
100%.
if that relationship exists, then you've built a company for the long haul. But if there's inconsistencies between the two, yeah. Anyway,
But that's where you could tell, like, if you're looking at competing against somebody that has inconsistent policy, well, then you can just about imagine that their customers are inconsistent in
Yeah.
like what they expect out of the
Yeah.
service.
yeah,
So, like, the more professional of a competitor you're looking at, I think the better off you are, because they're going to provide consistent policy and service,
Yep.
which means the customers are expected to be consistent on their end.
yeah,
So, and I would throw this out. When somebody signs up, you better convey to them, and probably in more than one way. You know, if you talk to them, let them know, here's our expectations of you.
mm-hmm.
You can expect A, B, and C from us, but we expect you to, pay your bill online. If you have to call in, it's going to be $2.
Yep.
If you say that up front, I think that is a perfectly fine way to go about.
We found being up front is 10 times better than trying to, apologize on the back end.
Oh, that's true with everything, though. That's
Yeah.
just life.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you're like kind of timid to like, I feel like you're a little timid to say your policy because you think your policy is maybe like a little abrasive or aggressive.
Aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you find out is if you do have that, which is smart, you should have policy like that. Just tell them up front, and then you're going to be a lot better off.
Yeah.
And it tends to be a non-issue because,
Yeah.
for goodness sakes, it's not like you can get a hold of Google or Microsoft or Facebook.
Yeah.
There's not a helpline or a service line.
No.
So from that, trash is probably still one of the few places that you can get to talk to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise, you can't.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just because it's a lot of small people. So even the big people have to compete against the small people. Whereas, like, if we're talking telecommunications, like Verizon,
right,
you're not going to get somebody on the phone with Verizon. But that's because the only people competing with Verizon are all on the same page. Like, oh, we don't
Right.
answer the phone. You got to go through a chatbot,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I would say services are like the biggest one, but it's kind of difficult to like fully understand the scope of it. The easier one is obviously price.
Right. So number one on service, it's great, but if people in that market, if you're going to go out and figure out, hey, I'm gonna sample this market to see if there's a market here. If I'm knocking on people's doors, let's say I'm going to get a sample of 100 people, I'll knock on their door and say, hey, what is, get your list and ask them, what, do you have good service? Oh, I have great service. When you say you have great service, what does that mean? Or, hey, I have horrible service. Oh, what does that mean? And then you can list those out. After you have that, you're going to have 40 or 50 of, if it's bad service, this is what it is. I mean, it's probably not going to take you more than 15 knocks on the door to find out
Right.
they don't show up, or they sent me to collections even though I send a check, or,
Yeah. So, like, on the topic of conditions in which you would start a garbage company on the bullet point of quality of service, you would actually advocate someone considering starting a garbage company to go knock on doors or do some sort of pulse check.
Oh, absolutely. I
And-
mean, if you're going to go
and-
invest $500,000 or $1 million,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, go knock on 100 doors.
and that's another discussion too. $500,000, $1 million investment. Some people start with like, I just bought this truck for $15,000. Now I can start a garbage company. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Right, but you have to do the market research.
Yeah.
Go knock
Yeah.
on doors, because what's in your head and what
Yeah.
your customers, but
And-
but that's also going to give you all the ammunition you need for your marketing, right?
Yeah.
So that you can be like, hey, we pick up on time, or this happens for
Uh-huh.
you. You know, it's a free pizza if we don't pick up on your pickup day.
Uh-huh. So it's going out and having a preliminary idea of what the metric for good service is, and then that idea changes as you take these questions
You
or
can- well-
answers. You know,
And people are going to, if there's an issue in a market, it's going to be the same issue for everybody.
yeah,
And they will tell you when you knock on the door, and never
Yeah.
try to sell them on anything
no,
hey,
not
hey,
that.
you know, my name's Nate. I'm thinking about entering the
Right.
the trash market here, but before I do, I want to make sure that there's a reason
Right.
to do it. Are you happy with your service? And then just shut up,
Yeah,
and then yes or no, and then ask them, what does that mean to you? And then just write it down and thank them.
yeah. You'd actually advocate to do that door to door as opposed to some sort of online.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably
survey.
different ways you could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could start generating leads online.
Sure.
Right, but this is the face to face, the personal piece of that. Also, if they see your advertising later,
Yeah.
those people are going to be like, "Hey, I talked to that guy. We should
Oh
probably
yeah,
switch."
that's got an advantage.
Yeah.
Because like Mitchell and I are probably both more digital favored. Like anything we can do digitally, we would. But I can see the advantage of when you're at the door and you're talking to someone, they might have an answer online, but when you tease it out in person, it's a little different.
Well, you're building
So
a relationship.
yeah.
and
I've got
Yeah.
like an example of this. So in our market, there's a guy that owns some rental property around here. He's out of another town, and they must have some sort of dumpster rental in their town. So he's gotten a few roll-offs here, and he's like, the service is really bad. Like, we're kind of looking
okay.
at entering the market. He's like,
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to run Google ads and sub it out. So I'll run Google ads. Any leads that I get, I'll like sign them up and sub it out. He was like kind of spitballing, but he's like aware of the bad service because he's
Yeah.
gotten roll-offs in Columbus before. And then he's like, yeah, I should just like start an online presence and start like feeling out like how many potential customers there would be for that service. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that'd be one way to like figure your market out. Just start advertising there and like taking leads.
That's funny.
You
Right.
have to sub it out though.
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing. It segues right into the next piece, which is price.
And that's what I told him. I'm like, okay, that's all well and good until you realize the price. Do you want to compete with that price? And he's like, well, I guess maybe I'd take bad service for that price.
Yeah.
And apparently you have a couple times, and
Yeah.
And that's what caught me off guard about the conversation with this guy, because it's like he definitely paid the bill for it. So it's like after paying that bill, you're like, I want to enter that market. I would not want to enter that market after I see that bill, because it's like, well, I can't compete with that price.
right.
But
Well, that's the classic triangle: fast, good, and cheap.
Pick two.
Pick two.
yes,
I want good and I want fast. Well, that's not cheap. I want good and cheap. Well, wait.
Right.
You're gonna wait. Yeah.
Well, especially now.
Yeah.
I want a low price. On what?
Yeah.
Well, so that takes us to price, because those roll-offs are ridiculously low. I mean, like under,
Oh,
Well,
you've looked at them around here.
I think they're like under
crazy.
like $100 or something.
Yeah.
$100 plus tonnage. I
But
mean,
that's like the two types of people that you'd be competing against. Like, is it a large national hauler or is it a local guy? Because I mean, price, the best price, or the best way to understand the price of a market is what a large company's charging. Because like they have all the input costs, right? They've got the fully staffed, fully licensed guys out running trucks, the whole nine on safety.
Right.
They've got shareholders that they're accountable for. Like that is
Dividends.
the
Right.
full price model is what a large company's charging.
So your margin would be, if you're starting a garbage company in a market competitive with a national hauler, your margin would be minus the shareholder dividend minus the extra overhead for all the middle management or managers, and what like how would you say, like how
Well,
would you determine how much to undercut your competitor, or do you even get into
No,
it?
no, I'm not talking about undercutting. I'm just saying, like, understand what the market's
Yeah.
being charged.
Yeah.
Like, what a large hauler's charging is
Yeah.
like a pretty good representation of like
Uh-huh.
where you could be potentially as far as like competitive on
Well,
price.
Yeah.
but and then on the other piece of that, is the national hauler, are they hauling to their own landfill or not?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
that's a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know,
That's huge. And that's like someone that's not been in trash thinking it's easy to start one. That's a big miss.
because what you're tipping for and what they're tipping
Ah.
for.
That's like your number one underlying cost. It's like your cost of disposal.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at
Yeah.
like the market, what you'd realistically be charging.
Sure.
Well, yeah, because you're looking at what a
Mm-hmm.
tenth of roughly a tenth of a ton. So, kind of if you use that, if you're at $25 a ton disposal, you're $2.50 per month for your customer. If you're at 50, it's 5. If you're at 75, it's 7.
Yeah.
At 100, it's 10. It's kind of hard to pick up trash for $18 a month. If you had $100 tip.
Yeah. And if you undercut, if your strategy, you guys want to even advocate undercutting the competition, starting one, or would you?
I mean, it's a tactic. I mean, what are you going to
Yeah.
do? You got price and you got service. So you either have better or more service, however you want to call it, or you compete on price.
But though service and price don't have the same weight in a customer deciding. Like service, it sounds like you would say service has a higher weight on
I would say
you know.
it's 85 or 90%.
Yeah, it's not 50-50. Yeah.
if you're trying to get a conversion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I've looked at all the times I've changed service on something like cell phone, internet, or restaurants I like. It's always been, what was my most unfavorable experience there? It was usually related to service. And if someone's listening, I'd ask them to evaluate what made you stop going to your favorite restaurant, or change your cell phone, or change your internet provider. Was it price, or like for me, I had a cell phone that wouldn't use Wi-Fi calling because it wasn't on the Sprint network. It was something else. And that's when I was like, service is bad, changing.
And a dollar or two doesn't make a difference. People
Yeah.
don't. The idea of people shopping around,
Yeah.
those days aren't, as long as it's reasonable. It's
Yeah.
not a very big number.
But the Walmart thing was like, to me, like a 90s thing, right? Like the race to the bottom.
Yeah.
What is the cheapest we can do this for? And I mean, you go into Walmart now and it's like empty.
Yeah.
But it's like Walmart, they ran that model and that model ran its course. And then all of a sudden people started realizing the high price of the cheapest,
Yep.
the
Cheapest
cheapest
expensive.
product, the cheapest service.
Yep.
Um,
No, I get it. I kind of derailed you guys. You guys were talking about service. I was-
and then we went to price.
yeah, we're talking about price.
Yeah.
But we're talking about like what has more weight.
Yeah.
Like here we're talking about
Service.
pricing and whether or not to undercut your local hauler or local competitor that's either a national one that has higher margins to cover. He's got the middle management. Like if you're competing
Oh.
against a large national hauler.
Instead of price, instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to come in $4 or $5 under market,
Yeah.
I think you're better off spending that. You take $5 times 12 months, that's $60, right?
Yeah.
Put that towards advertising.
Okay.
Put that towards marketing. Market yourself.
Yeah.
Is better than just giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
Because you probably don't have to give it away anyways.
So what's I think a rookie mistake a lot of people make is like, well, if service is the heavier weight, if that's 90% of a customer's decision, then I'm going to promise more service for the same price. So yeah, you can pile up trash as much as you want on the curb outside the cart, even if you start without a cart. Some haulers might start without a cart, but I'd say that's a huge misstep.
Do you need both? Do you need service and price to be competitive if you're entering a new market?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I think
yeah.
you would need both.
yeah, you have to have both. But if we're talking the difference between $26 and $28, I don't think $2 a month is enough for somebody to jump between
I agree.
website.
I agree.
Jump between websites. But if you have a clean website and you can order online and you're like, oh, this company makes it easy to do business with.
Yep.
They've got a bunch of good Google reviews. Here we go.
So of all the markets, how many do you think you would have both of them to enter? I mean, just what you vaguely know about. I mean, and you're probably talking in a regional sense. I mean, you talk to haulers,
yeah, yeah. So
across.
I would say you probably have the best chance of success where a national hauler has come in and consolidated. Let's say there were 5, and they bought 4 of them up.
They did a roll up.
Yep,
Yep.
They're trying to buy everybody up so that way they can just lower the cost of like running trucks around.
yep, and it takes them 2 years during that golden 2 years while they're giving horrible, and they've raised everybody's prices
Yeah.
during that transition anyway. So those people are primed to switch.
Yep.
Do you think those haulers know like that window of opportunity is small? Like when someone in those break rooms or boardrooms says we've determined the price to purchase these 4 haulers, we'll consolidate it, but it's going to take about 4 years or X amount of time for the customers to get wise or intolerant to the service quality, and we have so much time to make our return on investment. Like this is fleeting.
What I would say is it's a numbers game, and yeah, they know the numbers, and it's
Yeah.
not like you can pick an individual place where it didn't work, but they're doing it in so many different places
Right.
that only like 70% of the places have to pan out. If 30% of the places where they're doing that don't pan out because some competitive
Yeah.
like new guy starts up and just wrecks like what they were trying to do,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a numbers game, I would say.
There was an example where what was it? A local hauler sold the business, but it was like a spouse or girlfriend that was a part of it as well, but she wasn't part of the deal. So she got pissed and started her own company. I think this is how it unfolded. But so a large corporate company bought 700 stops, and then a new one popped up right away and took like 600 of those, like within a couple months. I was like, wow. And I was kind of I was at that other company helping them run routes. And I was like, this is a terrible idea because now we're running trucks so much further with so many hours. And every week it's just bring these carts back, bring these carts back, it's like, oh, it's like, this is dumb.
And I mean, somebody I was talking to a couple weeks ago said, there are companies that are just following GFL around the United States.
That's what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
though. I mean, if
They
you
roll them up and
if you want the highest odds of starting a good garbage company, you would go look at where the big guys are trying to roll it up.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where you would start.
oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
Because you've got price.
that's
you've
like
got
the honey
service,
hole of
you've got
fishing,
the-
right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
But
So
then that takes us to market too. So market and consolidation.
Yeah, market
so,
share.
So how many competitors do you have? Like I say, like 1 would be the best, 2
Yes.
would be the second best. But that's a two-sided equation to me too, because the fewer number of people you have, everyone thinks, oh well, then you can control price. It's like, well, yeah, you can control price, but as long as you have one competitor, I think price stays somewhat in line.
It does.
But it's the other side of the equation, which is your operating costs. When you have density, you have such an efficient allocation of your resources. Your guys are able to pick up so many stops an hour. Your trucks are filling up that fast. That is how you truly get your operating costs down. So you have to, if you ever go into a market, I think you have to have a density number in mind. Like what percentage of this market share am I going to have, and what percentage can I realistically get? Because if you go into a market with 5 haulers, how much are you realistically going to be able to pick off? Because you're number 6 now. Versus if a hauler just rolled up 4 of the 5 companies in a town, there's a lot of market up for grab, in my opinion.
There is, and it tends to break, 50-50. It's so hard for one guy to go get 50% of a market when there's 5 haulers or 6 haulers in a community. It just is.
Yeah, the number of haulers is probably one of the biggest numbers I would look at.
Yeah.
Just because we understand what density does to like our operating equation. I mean, we get our cost of operation down when we're just able to pick up, house after house.
Yeah.
But if you got to drive 7 houses in between every stop, that's just going to make your operating costs go through the roof.
Well, and it's a big difference if there's 2 haulers in a market and they both are giving horrible service. Okay, you've got a chance to a little. But if there's one that's horrible service, the other one has great service, That you're going to have a fight on your hands. They've already got a name and a reputation. So I think you really have to know all three, all of these, what's the service like, the price. Go knock on doors. I mean, if you're going to make an investment of money and time, go knock on doors and talk to people.
So in that scenario where you're saying there's two haulers, one's great service, one's not good service, but they both have a good percentage of the market share. Maybe not split 50-50, 70-30, whatever.
60-40, whatever.
Whatever. If you're looking at, oh, maybe there's an opportunity to start a garbage company, would you approach the one with the bad reputation and be like, hey, I'll just buy you out?
I think
If you got the money. I mean, is that a
Yeah,
better investment than?
I don't know if it's better. It's an option.
Yeah.
I mean, because you'd have the base, already there, and if you know what you're doing and you can bring that service around,
Yeah, it
great.
kind of depends on what sort of cleanup you have to do.
Right, and then you're probably going to get closer to if you're at 70-30, you'll have to work to get to 40-60,
Yeah.
45-55.
Yeah.
But over time, you'll be a 50-50 down.
I know. You guys have heard my personal conversations where I'm always riffing about cleaning up old farms, and I'll think to myself, maybe it would have been easier just to find a blank patch of dirt, start from scratch.
Right.
Because like to buy a company, now you have to buy all the problems with it, and you might be untangling a mess where like, wow, there's a lot more to undo before we take a step forward, as opposed to just starting from scratch.
And that'd go back to service expectations. Like,
Yeah.
what are they currently doing? What are the service expectations that you're going to inherit?
And what have they trained their customers that's okay for service?
Mm-hmm.
So the market, as much as you don't want a market where there's a lot of haulers, at the same time, the market needs to be growing.
Oh yeah.
So where do you want to have a garbage company? Do you want to have a garbage company in a town that's just stagnant, not growing, no houses are being built, or do you want to start a garbage company on the outskirts of some of these really fast-growing, like metropolitan areas,
Yeah.
where they're just taking off? I mean, to me, like the greatest garbage company would be like in Arizona, Texas,
Colorado.
wherever all these people are moving to. They're suburbs of those towns, and they're growing like crazy. And just there's so many houses coming online every year that there's just that many more potential customers.
Right.
Because if you don't have that, then at the end of the day, you just got to take customers from somebody else. if
Which
you're
is
in a
the
stagnant
hardest.
market.
Which is the
And
hardest.
that's the hardest thing to do.
Uh-huh.
Right. I agree. Yeah. No. High growth, especially.
And it's not even high growth. I mean, we're only talking single digit growth. Like houses aren't going up 50% a year. It's not like a market can just go from 100 to 150%. So, but even that little bit of growth is going to help you a lot.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
it comes down to, if you don't have that growth, you're taking it from somebody that already has it, which that's block and tackle.
Ooh. So, in a scenario where you had most ideal price points, or let's say of the two other topics we just discussed, quality of service and price point, let's say those two are like ideal, where you can come in, there's a bunch of haulers or a hauler with horrible service. You can come in with a great price, but if that market is stagnant, that's not as appealing as.
I'd take a stagnant market if it was a national hauler rolling it up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
If it's a national hauler rolling up small guys, I'd take that market any day.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be growing. Growing definitely is a bonus, though.
So you got like four variables mixing with another four variables. So you got 16 scenarios where it's like, which one like is ideal, And we kind of tried to discuss that earlier off recording, but yeah.
But it's easy to kind of be like, oh, you should start a garbage company. That'd be simple. Like, no, you want to understand the underlying variables before you jump into it.
Right, and knocking on 100 doors and talking to people will
I don't
give you.
disagree with that.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna find out a lot.
yeah.
You're going to find out a lot, and and those conversations are going to give you a lot of guiding light.
Mm-hmm.
So I would also say when you go to price, if you're starting a trash company, you have to make sure that you're technologically set up to be efficient from the get. You need to invest in like a trash flow type of software, so where everything is is into one. The service options for your customers to like pay their bill online, you have to have those things laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Because those are things that are going to help drive your unit cost down over time, because you have a system to be efficient.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. If you're starting one, make sure you know how to run one. And that's a whole nother topic, but it's like, if you buy one, can you buy one that's not like running on all cylinders and fix it up? And absolutely. I mean, fixing one up,
Yeah,
that's definitely plausible too.
that's a whole podcast in itself. And you probably had enough experience as far as seeing garbage companies that are mendable and some that it's like, oof.
Yeah. So everybody who has a garbage company, you're.
Well, they all have it figured out and they know what they're doing.
But every one of you, you have a database. I don't care if it's in QuickBooks or TrashFlow or Excel or whatever it is, but that database needs to be clean. Names need to be put in the same way. Phone numbers need to be put in the same way. Everything needs to be cleaned up and make it so that it's homogeneous through and through. That is really important to go towards efficiency.
Yeah, those are. I feel like that would be a tedious fix, but probably doable. But if you buy a whole company, if you were to buy a company to get something started, and half the drivers can't pass a piss test, and they're like, "What's a piss test? We don't do those." You'd be like, "Oh, now you got a whole staffing issue."
Yeah. You can't pass the whiz quiz. Yeah. Well, no, and I think that those are things you need to look at. Hey,
Yeah, that's-
I need,
And maybe that's, like I said, that's probably
the
that's
DOT logs.
yeah, that's a whole. We should probably get the DOT in and have them in for a podcast. That'd be hilarious.
It'd be interesting.
That would be really interesting.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, all of the things that we were talking about here, price, service, market share, those are all the things you need to work on as a trash company to
Build your moat.
build your moat.
Yep.
If you have great service, and I'll define great service as it's, we like you as a customer. We pick your trash up on the regular, and we have an agreement on how that is, right? Like all the trash is in the can or whatever it is. We make it easy to pay the bill. And you can be proud of us because, we're good citizens of the community. Boom. That's a great moat. It's hard to get away from that, right? If your price is in line with your competitor, great. And if you're always working towards, adding to your market share, that's going to stop like other haulers from wanting to come in.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with that.
One of the best, talking about a moat, the last thing that people want to see is a Sanitation, and they have 732 5-star Google reviews. That's like, that's I don't know if I want to enter the Columbus market when I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
So do those things matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, your customers are sticky. The customers you have, you always have to be gaining new customers though, because there's just a certain amount of churn in the market.
True.
So maintaining that and keeping your current customers happy while onboarding new ones is like massive in defending your company.
Right.
Yeah, if I was entering a market, I mean, I would look long and hard at it because you could really get yourself in a pickle too.
You could.
If you get in a market and you're like, oh, I'm gonna start a trash company, and you only get like 300 customers, so you have all that invested, and you find out 300 customers doesn't make you a living. Well, so how many residential customers would you need to make a living? Like, can you free fly this math? Like, if you were going to start a garbage company, what's your break even number on customer count? Like, how many accounts are you going to have to sign up?
I think you've got to be, I wouldn't say the first hurdle, because the first hurdle is probably at 800 or 900 customers.
That's what I was going to say. Little under 1,000.
Yeah, 800 or 900 customers is.
And you're a sole proprietor at that point.
You're a sole proprietor.
You're billing and you're picking everything up, and you own the truck.
Yep, you own the truck. You're the one-man band.
Yep.
Okay, so that means that you have to be streamlined, soup to nuts, which means great website, self-service, right? Have a product like TrashFlow, or likewise, something like it, so that everything is seamless on that end. You go out and pick up your stops. And hopefully you can start with a side loader and just get people used to that out the gate. I talk to guys and they start with rear loads because of the affordability.
Well,
Sure.
and versatility, because usually you do commercial and residential.
Right.
Or I mean, not usually, but
They
a
want
lot
to
of a lot of situations you do both.
I would throw this out there. I think it'd be better to start and focus just on one, like residential.
I agree.
Uh,
If you're going to start a company, focus on one service.
Focus on one service, and the reason why is, you might have a 2-yard that gets picked up for $75 or $100 a month, right? And that 2 yard's going to cost you $800. That's your capital expenditure on that. The same, you're going to be at $250 for the same revenue out of 4 cans, or 3 cans of residential trash, and that's going to get picked up faster. So I think once you get to that 2,500, you should be cash flowing pretty good.
You're saying 2,500 customers?
2,500, I would say at 1,500 customers, you're probably looking at, this is when I need to add my first person.
Okay, I got an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
this
have
is
somebody else picking it up.
and this is where you transition at 1,500, right in there. This is where if your goal is to grow your company, you are leaving the quote unquote job of picking up trash,
Yep.
and you are entering the stage of being the businessman of the company.
Yep.
So
And that's all within like that 1,500 within a community. Because
yeah,
we know in eastern Nebraska there's going to be companies that are driving multiple miles out in the country to pick up stops, and that's not the same.
no,
But
no.
the average person knows that, but I want to make sure that's understood.
Right. No, this isn't doing 160 stops on 289 miles,
I've seen that happen.
right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
this is, you're in a
Yeah.
residential neighborhood
Yep.
with houses, and you're picking them up, and so because at 2,000, you're getting to like 400-500 a day for that guy.
Yep.
And that's so that next step, maybe the owner starts to have a smaller route that he picks up early in the day for 2 or 3 hours
Yep.
on those overflows, and as that grows, then he can add his next guy, but slowly but surely. But you have to have the systems and processes in place, and and
Yeah, you got to be ready to scale. I mean, your first 100 customers, you could, do it all wrong, have bad, ways of billing and stuff, and it would work because you only have 100 customers. But once you hit 1,000, then all of a sudden you realize how much work it is. So it's like, I need the most efficient way to get this done. Billing, picking up, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have good processes at the beginning, which is why if you're going to get into it, you should know how to do it.
or find somebody who does,
Right.
or find multiple people who do, and listen to what they have to say. It's I don't understand why people have, I've got all my stuff in QuickBooks and I've got all my routes in Excel, and my guys have to write down if there's extras on a piece of paper. Get a software that everything's internally all together so that it can just happen. There are systems and processes out there. So
Yeah.
That's one of those things as a driver. It took a while to really appreciate how those micro moments can compound or add up. Because
Also-
I've driven routes before where you got 20 sheets, each
Oh.
with like 20 addresses on it. You tip one, you take your hands off the wheel, grab a pen, then you start driving again. And you do that how many times in a day? And some guys would get good enough where they'd run like maybe 20 stops and then they'd pencil whip all of them.
right.
But then you don't know, did I really get that or not?
Well, and even if it's on paper, it's not in a
Yeah.
system that you can look up. I mean, the nice thing about trash flow is,
Yeah.
when somebody was picked up, and if the trash wasn't out, I mean,
Yeah.
the nicest thing is when people are using the teller out on the trash flow, right?
Yeah.
And it shows like the trash can wasn't out and it was 11:33 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they call in, and hey, he wasn't here. He was there at 11:33. That 11 it tends to stop the argument if he
Yeah.
was there or not. So
Your life is so much easier when you just decide to run everything at a professional level
Yeah.
and have high expectations in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then when people call in and they realize who they're dealing with, that sets their tone a lot. Like
Yes.
when customers call in and they sense uncertainty in like the voice of who they're talking to, that's when they start like running people over in the office. And that's when people start having like bad days and don't like answering the phone. When people call in and they hit certainty and confidence, and we know our policies, we know that our truck was there, we know it wasn't out, we know why we billed you that. That is when, you know, you have the upper hand on the customer because the customer realizes that you're operating at a professional level and they're not going to protest that. But they will protest it if they sense hesitation.
Right. Oh, he should have been there.
Yeah.
You know, and then that turns into a whole process. So you got to call the driver, and, you know,
Yeah.
now we're wasting everybody's time.
Yep.
So,
Well, you guys covered those. Did you want to cover types of haulers? Did
yeah,
you kind
yeah.
of?
Oh, I mean, I guess the type of hauler would be the best type of hauler is one that has to, or I get the best type of hauler to me is the national hauler
To compete
to
against.
compete against.
To
Yeah.
compete against.
Yeah.
So I guess should we address a bad hauler?
how so? I mean, service price.
What would be difficult to compete against?
Oh, what would be? I'll tell you, a guy that gives everything away.
Yep.
You know, and he makes it so damn cheap that people are like,
Yeah.
you know, the market's at 28 and they come in at 16.
That's a Walmart strategy.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, they're sucking up business, but everybody complains.
Yeah.
But
know.
that's like a catch-22 to me because, you know, even in our like local market, there's just like different groups of people that like we went through this. Like you used to be able to get plumbers in Columbus so easy. Like there were so many plumbers, like they competed for the plumbing,
Right.
and like a lot of guys were sole proprietors, so you could get it done like fairly cheap. Well, all those guys are retiring, right? So now we're down to only a couple plumbers. So it's like if you're one of the last man standing, all of a sudden you went from being in this highly competitive market to now you're in the driver's seat with like what you want to bid, what you want to do, and what you want to charge. And I mean, it's not even about price anymore. It's kind of like, do they have time to do it? Do they have the crews to do
Right.
it? And so, like, you know, the bad competition, like, it will only last so long, and eventually those people phase out, right? Because
Right.
at some point, they're held accountable by either their shareholders or their business practices,
Or the bank.
the bank. Yeah,
Mm.
you know, truck gets in an accident, guy doesn't have a CDL, like, you know, insurance companies. So the bad competitors are like a catch-22 to me at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, because you go into the service and pricing matrix, and these people might be spending like more money because, well, they only get picked up every other week anyways. So their cost per pickup,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, that's why you have to go and knock on people's doors.
Mm-hmm.
If you knock on people's doors and they're like, "So, do you have good service or bad service?" "Oh, I have horrible service." Oh, would you ever leave that company to have, you know, what's your definition of good service? Would you leave that company? You know, I'm just doing a market analysis. Well, no. Why wouldn't you? Because there's $16 a month, which is half price. Oh, okay. You know, at least you know that going in, that's going to be the thing that you're fighting.
Garbage is like so block and tackle too, because let's say we do know of a market 500 miles away where there's all this turmoil. Like if you're not on the ground floor in the market, you can't just like deploy assets 500 miles away and like run it from a laptop, right? Whereas like maybe other businesses you can do that, maybe more
No,
like
there are
there's
plenty.
plenty of businesses where they just sit around all day, they look at all the different markets, and then they target the ones they're going to go to. Garbage is just so difficult because you have to kind of be boots on the ground, especially if you're starting up.
Right. Or have people in your organization who can go there and be boots on the ground. But for the most part, you know, you've got the office staff here. You know, you could have all your calls forwarded to here. I mean, nobody's the wiser.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
outsource it.
yeah,
I've heard those stories.
yeah. So
India's hiring.
yeah. But yeah,
Those are definitely things I'd look at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we are 50 minutes in. You guys are. I kind of wanted you guys to lead this one. Are
Yeah.
you kind of?
Yeah, no, I'd say we're good. That's like the general stuff that I would look at.
Yeah.
There's probably more variables to it, and then there's definitely a component of like buying a company versus starting a company.
Right.
What you'd be looking at. But I mean, that's just so much in the operations of like what you're getting for what you're paying, and
Right.
what you're going to have to do.
If I'm gonna do a close, I got to move over here because Nate kicked the camera.
Oh, sorry about that. You
Kicks
want
me out of frame.
So,
I don't care. I'm not that vain.
but hey, I'm going to give myself a shameless plug.
No, I was
you
about
go.
to plug you.
Are you going to plug?
So
me?
Nate Williams with Trash Joe's.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in again. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure.
And people listening to this,
Yeah.
if there are questions
Yeah.
that you would like answers, you can find my number at trashshows.com, or you can email me at Nate.
I'll put it right across here. Say it. It'll follow my finger.
Okay, Nate at trashshows.com.
There you go.
There you
Nice.
go. Thanks for having me,
All right,
guys.
thanks for coming in.
All right, everybody, have a good day. Thanks for listening for episode 9, and stay tuned. We're a little irregular on our posting, but it's spring. Things are getting busy. You got Waste Expo going too
Next
and
week.
so we're all going to be a little hectic until we settled in through the summer. All right, thanks for listening or watching, and have a good one.